Thank you, Chair.
Senate Committee on National Finance. My name is Anaïs Bussières McNicoll. I'm the Director of the Fundamental Freedoms Program at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you CCLA's perspective on Bill C-15's proposed amendments to the Red Tape Reduction Act. The CCLA is an independent, non-governmental, non-partisan national organization founded in 1964 with a mandate to defend and promote the civil liberties, human rights, and democratic freedoms of all people across Canada. The CCLA is deeply concerned by the new power proposed by Bill C-15 that would allow federal ministers to exempt entities for up to 6 years from the application of most federal laws and regulations. Exempted entities could include individuals, corporations, as well as federal and provincial governments. On February 20th, more than 100 prominent law and human rights experts, labor, sector leader, and civil society organizations released an open letter warning parliamentarians about the anti-democratic path the proposed exemption powers would send Canada down on. The focus of our letter was on urging parliamentarians to vote against Part 5, Division 5 of Bill C-15. A few days later, the House of Commons voted to add some constraints to the proposed exemption powers. Of note, these powers' purpose would now be limited to encouraging innovation, competitiveness, or economic growth in 2 sectors, namely the clean technology and financial technology sectors. While the amendments voted by the House of Commons are a step in the right direction, they neither address nor cure the profoundly problematic nature of the proposed exemption powers. Giving the executive the power to unilaterally bypass an act of parliament is an affront to the separation of powers, this constitutional architecture that stops any single branch of government from becoming too powerful, ensuring a system of checks and balances that prevents abuse and overreach. Exemption powers are also an attack on the rule of law principle, which guarantees that everyone, including the government and powerful individuals, is subject to and accountable under the same publicly known, equally enforced, and independently adjudicated laws. Our government's respect for these key principles will define how we, as a country, resist a troubling trend of democratic decline that we observe around the world. In this context, we urge the Senate, as the chamber of sober second thought, to consider whether the new exemption powers introduced by the federal government are worth the threat they pose to our democratic processes and principles. The CCLA's response to this question is unequivocal. The risks clearly outweigh the benefits, so these exemption powers should be removed from Bill C-15. Should the committee reach a different conclusion, we respectfully urge its members to add important safeguards to the proposed exemption powers in order to partially mitigate their detrimental impacts on people of Canada. CCLA's proposed amendments are attached to our opening remarks. Firstly, the CCLA recommends adding a handful of acts to the proposed definition of excluded act to minimize risks of human rights, workers' rights, privacy rights, and government accountability protections being trampled on in the name of economic growth, competitivity, or innovation. These statutes are the Canada Labour Code, the Canadian Human Rights Act, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, and the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act. Secondly, the mandatory consultation process provided under proposed paragraph 12.3b of the Red Tape Reduction Act should be amended to require that the minister consult groups and communities likely to be adversely impacted by a requested exemption. Third, we note that the minister's transparency duties pursuant to proposed section 14, 14.1, and 14.2 of the Red Tape Reduction Act are significantly compromised by the breadth of the discretionary power granted to withhold information that, in the minister's opinion, would be inappropriate to make publicly accessible, to publish, or to include in the report, and I quote, for reasons that include safety or security considerations or the protection of confidential or personal information. We recommend amending subsections 14.2, 14.12, and 14.23 so that the minister's discretionary power is limited by an exhaustive list of considerations as opposed to the current non-exhaustive list. This could be achieved by removing the words reasons that include from these 3 subsections. We thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions in the language of your choice.